offenses. You look at Baylor, who won a national championship, Arkansas, Alabama. When Duke and Kentucky and Kansas are national title good and they're considered guard-oriented offenses, their guards are still getting to the basket and you're getting the ball to your big men. Could Baylor shoot the three ball really well, and could Arkansas and Alabama hit the three really well? Yeah. But they also have the ability, their guards have the ability to break down the defense and get to the basket and feed the ball either to the big man or kick it back out. And I think that's what I think we got to mention when this seems to be more guard-oriented. It's not perimeter-oriented. It's not going to be, let's stand out behind the three-point line and chunk 20 to 33s. That may happen on a couple of nights, and Carolina may be more equipped to play that style. But it's basically this team being able to get to the basket with their guards as opposed to pounding it in the post through their big men. So with his coming back, the roster, Carolina, you never know. They may add another late recruit. They may add another transfer because the transfer portal isn't going to slow down anytime soon. But as of right now, we're led to believe that Carolina's roster heading into next season is pretty much this is where it is, and Hubert Davis will work with it from there. And that's led to the discussion of what's Carolina's best lineup with with Armando Bacot back. And I think it's a very interesting discussion because as you mentioned, if you don't play Brady Manek, your size is not what it's been in the last couple of years, and it's not going to be what it is in the last couple of years anyway, even if you have Manek and Bacot on the floor at the same time. But there's a lot of different things that you can do with this. So the first three that I jotted down in our rundown is Caleb Love, Kerwin Walton, Leaky Black, Brady Manek, Armando Bacot. Then I have Caleb Love, R.J. Davis, Kerwin Walton, Brady Manek, and Armando Bacot. Then I have Caleb Love, R.J. Davis, Kerwin Walton, Leaky Black, and Armando Bacot. And then I have other. So I think the three that I listed are the three most frequent options, and I think they all three provide something that uniquely that Carolina can use to their advantage, and they're going to use the first lineup, Love, Walton, Black, Manek, Bacot. You have a senior in your starting lineup, which I think experience matters. Leaky Black hasn't really been a great player. Senior leadership is important. You also got Brady Manek, who's a senior, but he's a transfer. But that gives Carolina the most size. But I feel like that's a lineup that you want to play in spots to match up if you're having a hard time competing on the boards. That lineup, to me, is a lot like this past year's lineup where the floor is not going to be as open. Maybe just because Brady Manek is a stretch four. But I don't see Carolina being a much more high-potent offense. And you have Love, Davis, Walton, Manek, Bacot. That gives you three perimeter players. Manek, who can stretch the floor, then Bacot. You got, and to me, that's probably my best lineup. I think Leaky Black's role has always been best coming off the bench. If you go back to his freshman season, he was a much better bench player as opposed to what we've seen from him as a starting lineup. Then I have, Love, Davis, Walton, Black, and Bacot. Then you have Leaky Black at the stretch four. That brings Brady Manek off the bench. I think that's a line that you can utilize, but I think that second lineup is Carolina's best lineup on May 5th for next season.
Yeah, that would be excuse me. That would be my starting lineup today, for sure. I think that, as you mentioned, you got three guards that you hope are going to be able to shoot the ball well for you. Kerwin Walton did a year ago. You saw some signs of that from R.J. Davis and Caleb Love. And the other thing about those guys is those are probably the guys that you think are going to take the biggest steps forward amongst the guards. And they're the guys that are going to be able to drive the basket the best out of the group that's there. I think, the other lineup that's not on here that I think will get a lot of run will be Caleb Love, Anthony Harris, Leaky Black, Brady Manek, and Armando Bacot, because you've got two guys on your perimeter. That's your best defensive lineup. And that's the thing. You're going to see more of Anthony Harris this year. There's still going to be a team that, as we talked about before last season, they're not going to be a team that is probably going to be one of the highest scoring teams in the country. That's not something that's probably in the cards for them yet. They're going to have to build back up to being in that position to score the ball at will. So you're going to have nights where you can shut some teams down defensively. And that is probably the lineup that you will see a pretty good amount of to try to take away some of those better scoring options that are still around in the ACC. Believe it or not, Buddy Boeheim is still back next year. You are going to have some teams that you would expect to get better from this past year, like Duke. They've got a lot of talent coming in. Yeah. They're going to have guys that can score the ball. So those are the types of teams that you're going to need that lineup against. But yeah, I would definitely say if you're looking at what the best lineup is, the one that you think is going to be the most successful, it's probably going to be the Love, Davis, Walton, and Manick, and Bacot grouping. I think the biggest thing for that group is you want to see what the guards look like defensively. Because if so, that's a group that you could probably look at consistently night in and night out in most games being, +5, +10 when on the floor. And that's what you're hoping for.
The defensive end of the floor, I think, and I'm guilty of this because I love offensive basketball, Carolina's going to look a lot different, I believe, on the defensive end of the court. Under Roy Williams, this has been a team or a program that plays three-quarter man-to-man defense, half-court man-to-man defense. They don't full-court press. They don't play zone. They don't do anything. Well, Hubert Davis played for Dean Smith, who played zone, who played full-court defense, who played half-court defense. I think Carolina's traps will be a lot better. You look at everyone he's put on his staff. They all come from a coaching tree where they played for a coach that played multiple defenses, multiple possessions. So I do think Carolina will play matchup defense at times this season, and I think they're equipped to. Leaky Black has not gotten they've not gotten the most out of his defensive ability, in my opinion. But and that's part of the way that Carolina has played under Roy Williams. You also haven't gotten the best yet out of Caleb Love, R.J. Davis, and Anthony Harris. I may be wrong, and I may be biased. I think those three guys can impact the game on the defensive end as well as any guard that we've seen come through Carolina's program in the last 10 years. They're aggressive. When everything about R.J. Davis being a New York guard, he is. He's tough. He's scrappy. He's not willing to, he's willing to risk his body and get a little dirty. Anthony Harris, his quickness, and the Caleb Love, just his length. So I do think you're going to see Carolina play with some more defensive-oriented matchups, but only when they feel like they need to. I don't think, as you mentioned, I don't think Carolina's going to lead the team in scoring or lead the country in scoring this season, but I do think that they're still going to run. They still want to get 80 a night because if they get the games to the 80s, they feel more comfortable in winning. They're just going to try to get there in a different way. But I think the best thing about this is, does Carolina have the depth they've had the last couple years? No, they don't. But they still have enough talent to play some different lineups that are going to cause problems in the ACC, which is really good for Hubert Davis as he adjusts to being the head coach. It's not like he's taken over a program that is short on talent. They may be short on depth, but they have what most teams consider depth. We've been spoiled by thinking you could play 10 or 11 deep. That's not usually the case at anywhere in college basketball, let alone at a blue blood like North Carolina. So now you're getting back to playing with just 8 or 9. That's how most teams play. And so I do think it'll be an adjustment period, but the talent will make it easier. I mentioned the staff.
Real quick, I think the concern is more with the fact, not that you don't have the depth, that the depth is not spread out. You have a deep backcourt, and the front court is very thin. That's where more of the concern is. But I think, like you said, I would be stunned if they do not land somebody on the recruiting trail or pull someone out of the transfer portal to add to that front court. It's just, I know they're going to be a team that's going to play smaller. They're going to want to stretch the floor. I would be stunned if they do not add somebody with a little bit of size down there.
You can't survive a 20-game ACC schedule with two bigs.
They are not
competitively.
They are not going to just all of a sudden say, well, we're going to go smaller, we're going to stretch the floor more. We're completely abandoning what Roy Williams and his staff did here, probably best, which was pound the glass. That's not going to happen. They're still going to want to be one of the best rebounding teams in the country.
You got to be, because it's the most, outside of making shots.
Right.
Rebounding is the most important aspect of the game.
And you can get your guards to rebound. Trust me. Your guards are going to have – Leaky Black is going to have to be a better rebounder. Dontrez Styles is going to have to prove he can rebound. You're going to have Puff Johnson show that he can do something on the glass. But
they should bring in Kenny Williams and show him a seminar of guards that can get to the glass.
Cole Anthony comes in, teaches the point guards and shooting guards how to rebound.
Because Carolina can do a lot of things better or a lot of things different under Hubert Davis that might be better. If they can't rebound competently and be a top 10 to 15 rebound, I don't think this team's going to lead the country in rebounding. I mean, maybe they will, and if they do, that's just a testament.
I don't think this year. I mean,
that's just
amazing.
A testament to the coaching staff. But if they're not a top 10 to 15 rebounding team, this team's not going to compete to win an ACC or a national championship.
Right.
Because it's still the most important aspect of the game of basketball outside of making shots.
Yeah, they're going to add somebody. It's just a matter of where does that person come from, and if it's they're off the recruiting trail, how quickly can they get acclimated?
Yeah. I mentioned that the staff, and we talked about it on the last podcast, but he has since added to his staff, and in my opinion, outside of the guys that he retained, I think he made his best hire. Bringing in Pat Sullivan, a former teammate of his back from the late 80s and early 90s. Sullivan was actually the first Tar Heel player since 1969 to appear in 3 Final Fours. He was the guy at the foul line that missed the free throw that led to the infamous Chris Webber timeout that you hear in the intro, and then is one of Woody Durham's best calls, and ultimately led Dean Smith to his second national championship as the Tar Heels head coach. After his playing career was over, immediately got into the coaching side of the game of basketball, was on Dean Smith's final staffs and Bill Guthridge's staff before heading off he went to UNCW, and then he spent the last 18 years in the NBA. And I thought it was funny, if you go back and you listen to Hubert Davis talk about, he played in the NBA, and he made that well known in his press conference. He retired in the middle 2000s. The NBA then isn't the NBA that it is now. Spacing and stuff like that was still important, but not to the level of where the game is now. And because
he didn't have Steph Curry.
Because Steph Curry hadn't come into the NBA and completely changed the game of basketball. So you're bringing in a guy, Pat Sullivan, who's been in the NBA since 2003. He's been with great head coaches like Larry Brown. He's now leaving the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I know a lot of people were complaining about why would you hire a guy from the Timberwolves because they're the worst team in the league. They may have the worst record in the NBA, but they got one of the best young talents in Anthony Edwards, and his development over the season has been really important. It's been you could see it happening on the court, so he's been in a lot of places where he's had some young talent, and he's been able to work with it. And I think this is the best hire because he will be his best, outside of himself, the best guy to sell them on the recruits on the NBA, because he's been in the NBA for the last 18 years. He knows the landscape at the NBA. He brings in connections to guys at the professional level of basketball. And look, Carolina, if you're wanting to change the way you're wanting to play, all signs lean to a more modern style, which is, of course, what you see in the NBA. And he's been in the NBA game for the last 18 years. He was there as the game evolved. Carolina's about to evolve. He'll be able to help you kind of ease through it, oversee, suggest some things that work, some things that don't work. And, a lot of people weren't excited about this guy. And, look, I never got to see him play. I was not born yet, and he was on a Knicks staff for a Knicks team that I refused to watch because they were not very good. But this is a great addition to the staff.
Oh, I thought you meant because James Dolan was still the owner.
I was going to say that too, but they're not good because of James Dolan.
Hey, that's all right. He's now focusing on ruining his hockey team, and I'm sitting back and enjoying that as a Rangers fan. But that's something that's a different podcast. Look, I liked it as well. The mindset of this isn't really a great hire. Are we shocked by that? Is there a great hire out there? I think at this point you could hire Phil Jackson to work on this staff, and people would be like, well, but he's a little too old.
Not a Carolina guy,
dude. The last time that he was in the NBA, he was with the Knicks. Just a disaster.
Can't coach without Tex Winter.
You know, he couldn't win the NBA title when Michael Jordan went to play baseball for the White Sox. I mean, what a failure. Like, at this point, you could literally hire Jesus Christ and they would find something wrong with the hire. I mean, it's really gotten to the point now where there is just so much criticism